broken. That's the ending.
Wow, I love that.
So deep.
Yeah, so it's philosophical.
Wow.
That's really
What
all
about
the mirrors.
what about ADHD? Well, I'd love to hear a bit more about that as well. If you are open to share.
Kimberly.
Oh, by the way, if you're okay, we are going to kind of record it so that others who couldn't join can join as well. If you're not okay, then can feel free to let me know.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kimberly.
Hey, Kimberly.
Yeah, so mine is the ADHD one. Yeah, so I learned the new term a few days back. So it's called the ADHD world or era that we live in right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking that the color palette that I place inside was to represent that books would have to be eye-catching, like even more eye-catching than right now. Yeah, and then more colorful and being social beings, penguins are actually very sociable, and us as humans as well. So yeah, I just imagine like books have to be something that we have in common to talk about.
Wow,
Yeah.
that makes our life colorful, especially with the social penguins. Also, you have anyone else like to share? Wow, so amazing. Any thoughts, Eunice?
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So in our breakout room, right? So we had a very interesting conversation with Sophia and Shangrong, right? So we are kind of like envisioning the book future that incorporate five senses. Just because like how COVID, right? Everyone has to be stuck at home. Then we cannot really travel and we cannot really go out and eat. We cannot do a lot of things. So what if book can be in any forms, right? Like what if it can bring us to places? And we were just talking about, me and Sophia were just talking about like how maybe from Insta story, maybe we scroll through a recipe, maybe we can just taste it already before actually making the food itself. So it just letting imagination goes wild, like if it has senses, we can just feel and do things with books. Yeah.
Wow, five senses.
Yeah, Sophia, I think Sophia has so many sharing. Sophia, do you want to share about like how you mentioned, a lot of life learnings in books and it's not really accessible to everyone? Do you want to kind of voice over to that, Sophia?
I'm good. I think Eunice, you have explained it really clearly. Thank you.
Wow. I like the five senses part because it just makes us think about how do you taste and imagine books. So different. Thanks for sharing, Sophia and Eunice. All right, that's our end of ice breaking. I hope you'll have some fun reading this. Next up will be, I'd like to introduce Arsi, a very close friend of mine. He's right now in Shanghai. He's a professor at Shanghai Jiao Tong Daxue and also be facilitating and moderating sessions for all the speakers. Let's welcome him and give him a round of applause.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Frankie. I will pick it up from here. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the community again. Let's kickstart our main event tonight. So I think Frankie introduced me, so I would not reintroduce myself. Our theme today surrounds creativity, as you all know. Traditionally, when we think about creativity, our mind zooms in on things like art, writing, and music. But in fact, the essence of creativity is far-reaching, right? I think we have come to realize, especially in recent years, that creativity is not only fundamental in many things that we do, but also present in how we think and how we approach problems. I think it helps us answer important questions, but more importantly, it helps us ask new questions. And I think especially in the past few decades, we advanced a lot in philosophy and other areas. And essentially with creativity, we are breaking down the boundaries and definitions built by those who come before us and edge forward in writing our futures. So tonight we are happy to have three speakers from three different backgrounds. They will each share a book that will not only help us become more creative, but will also help us learn of the great potential, reach, and benefits of creativity. So before we start with the first speaker, let me briefly explain the format of tonight's event. Each speaker will speak for roughly 10 minutes, and then we will enter the Q&A session for that speaker. The audience can choose to ask questions in the chat box or by raising their digital Zoom hand. So that is one of the emojis that is available to you on Zoom. I will then read out the questions or unmute you so that you can ask the questions yourself. All right. So our first speaker today is Charissa Ong. Charissa came here before. We really enjoyed her presence. She is the lead product designer at Boost eWallet, Axiata. She's also a best-selling author and the founder of Penwings Publishings. Her life involves revolutionizing and optimizing how all Malaysians carry out their daily dues. She also publishes talented authors from all over the world with Tree for Humankind. It explores the groundbreaking narrative for humanity's creation and evolution. Let's welcome Charissa.
Yay! You can use that emoji. There's a clap, like the little emoji here. Yeah. I'm really enjoying Anna's Halloween costume. It's really in the mood. It's amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. Thanks for the introduction, RC. So those are kind of like the brief stuff that I do. It's actually very, very comprehensive. You should write my CV. Okay, so my book, unfortunately, the book that I want to share with you guys, I've borrowed it out to a friend because I'm really making sure my friend reads it. Okay, so this book is rarely in my house. So after my friend finishes reading the book, I am yet to send it to another person to read it. So this book is on a journey. Okay, so this book is called Sapiens by Yuval Harari. Let me just type it out in the chat. It's the brief history of humankind. And the reason why I really, really like this book, as Frankie mentioned, I am an avid reader. I read 30 minutes every night before I go to sleep. I try to read a book every week for the rest of the year. I used to read about 60 to 80 books a year, but now I've kind of went down to like 40 books a year. So out of like the 400 books that I've read throughout my lifetime, this book is number one. And I'm so excited to share with you why I ranked it so. And yeah, let's just get to it then. Okay, so there's a few themes that Sapiens actually discusses about. Yeah, it changes life so much. The first theme that is very important to me and really life-changing is the theme that we should truly understand processes and not just follow them blindly. So how did Sapiens kind of illustrate this point? It's because we go back, Yuval actually takes you all the way back to the time where we're all like primitive and like, cooking at the caves and all that. So how are these societies and these clans formed? So to actually go to this part of the past to really understand why things happen, it really gives a lot of light, shines a lot of light to why we do things today. So for example, why do we have dictatorship? Why do we have democracy and all that? It's because of how people organize themselves in the past. So for example, people, and also the way why racism and why people have more affinity towards their own religion towards other people compared to other people's religion, right? So all these things actually happen because of survival. And how this happens is that from this village to another person's village, I will need to size up this person really quickly. So in order to size up this person very quickly, I need to understand and I need to know that they basically follow the same beliefs as me. And then I will do like similar tradings and all that to basically be in peace with this other foreign person. And this sizing up actually happens when a person wants to believe another person that looks like them. So that way, appearance is the quickest way to judge whether this person will murder you or not in the past. So that was very functional, right? And it goes towards the, like, in the future where empires are formed and then religions are made. So in order to collaborate with different nations, people instill different beliefs and different myths and different religions to kind of communicate and also collaborate between different villages, so they know that they are in sync, right? But the thing is, right now, time has gone past for so long, and people just teach these teachings down to continuously to the next generations. And in order to keep order, people were questioned, and people were actually forced to not question processes or religion or why people do these things and all that. So that's why certain things just kind of blindly get taught to the next generation. So, so what that taught me is that there's this story, which I must put a disclaimer, it's not my personal story, but it's a story that I've read online, that it talks about, there's this niece, I don't know if you've heard the story about the fish. There's this young girl, and she's watching her mother cook. So she watches her mother cook a fish, and the mother chops off the head and chops off the tail of the fish and fries the fish, right? So the daughter asks the mother, like, why did you cook the fish that way? Like, why do you cut off the head and the tail? Like, why can't you just cook the whole fish? Does the head affect the taste of the dish? So the mother kind of didn't really know why as well. So she kind of said, you know what, I'll ask your grandma why that happens, and why am I not cooking the head together? Like, why waste the meat, right? So the mother goes to the grandmother and asks the grandmother, why is the fish cut like that? So the grandmother just laughed and said, oh, because last time my pan is really small, so I had to cut the head and the tail in order to feed the meat inside the pan so I can cook it. So in the end, like the mother and the grandmother just laughed lah. So this story, it illustrates the point so perfectly, right? That if you don't question things and you just follow processes that has been passed down, you don't really know the origins of things. So this is like the overall theme of the whole book, right? Is to really just understand the origins of why everything happens. And by doing that, you can be like more tolerant towards people around you and situations as well, and be more empathetic as well. As long as, the thing is, being empathetic is one of the ways that books have changed me, especially Sapiens, and really just understanding from their point of perspectives why they change, why do they think this way, why do they perform certain actions in a certain manner. Does it go back to their cultural roots back in like 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago? So it's really, you just have to understand where they're coming from. And then that is what happens there. So that was one of the themes, which is, I think, just the first and second chapter of the book. It's very philosophical. There's a few chapters there. And then the next theme that I found very, very life-changing is because I'm super into philosophical books and ideas and trying to understand the purpose and the meaning of life, on why we are on this earth. So I've read a couple of texts from different religions as well, just to kind of find a common ground on what it is, right? But for some reason, I found it in Sapiens. And what he wrote there was that life has no purpose. And that is like a hit in the face, right? Because you would expect that you were born and let's say God has written a plan for you in the future and everything. But the thing is, you give yourself that purpose in reality. Like if you would zoom out far enough into the universe and you were just like this tiny speck of dust, if like a sunspot would just ignite and like just burn out the entire earth, like nothing else would ever even matter, right? So in the end, to make things more to make ourselves sane, to make us live and live life to the fullest, we have to scroll down and zoom in into the things that make us feel worthy and makes us feel happy and makes us feel like there is actually value in this world. So really understanding the purpose of life and making it your own is something that's very eye-opening for me. See, I can't even speak. Very, very eye-opening for me when I read that text. In one way, it kind of made me a bit sad. Another, on the other half of the coin, it kind of gave me more control over my life. I wasn't just waiting for a sign to like, Carissa, now you must quit your job and go volunteer in the jungle for 50 years. You know, I wasn't waiting for that sign anymore. I was thinking like, how can I, as a person, contribute to society? And that little exercise I did just now was actually kind of like my vision for my company, my publishing company. So that is the purpose that I've created for my life, answering Shang Rong Chua's question in the chat. I kind of want to just increase tolerance and empathy, because everyone can kind of wish for peace on earth. And it's not that easy to get peace on earth, because what we really need, and if we really want peace, we need empathy, extreme empathy, tolerance, and knowledge to really understand why people are doing certain things. We don't get angry at them because they act a certain way. Yeah. Basically not getting angry immediately. I'm still learning myself, and to just ask them why they do certain things and understand it from their point of view. Yeah, for doing that. The price I have to pay to create that meaning of life and to build a future vision. Yeah, so that was actually a question from Frankie. So are we into the Q&A now? Yeah, okay, sure. Let's go into Q&A. So the price that I have to pay, I wouldn't say that it was not really a price and I have to pay. Because if not, you'll feel very negative, right? It feels like a very negative experience to go towards the future vision. Basically, I just have to find activities that I enjoy and are productive and makes me know and basically understand that these activities that I do right now puts me on a projection of what I want to be in the future. Because a lot of times where we fall into this deep pit of like depression, of sadness, we all aim to just go back to who we were because it was better before. But that's totally the really sad way of thinking of changing yourself, because you're not really changing yourself. You kind of want to digress back to who you were. But it is understandable people do think that like that way, because
Can I cut in for a second? So I think Teresa did a great job cutting in so naturally into the Q&A session.
yeah.
So I just want to say that feel free to ask your questions in the chat box, and also feel free to raise your hand using the reactions button to get unmuted. Actually, it's not in the reactions, it's under the chat area. Or just in some way signal me if you want to ask questions in person.
And could we just
Yeah.
give
Go
a
ahead.
big round of applause to Carissa for really sharing that learnings and stories? Can you just unmute yourself and maybe like really give a round of applause? Thanks so much. Wow, a lot of reactions there.
Yeah.
Love as well.
There's a question there. Philosophy is about asking questions about your life, but not so much on the answers. Yeah, I mean, even that sentence itself is kind of interesting to me already. So do you think your self-discovering journey is a destination or rather than a never-ending path? Definitely a never-ending path. Because I just had a podcast recently about hating yourself, how basically self-satisfaction. We will always hate our past self, but that's a sign that you're improving. You're always better the next day and the next day after that. So it's healthy to make sure to just understand that, you know, this struggle is never ending, but it doesn't need to be like a horrible struggle. It could be a fun struggle. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, cool. I think I've taken up enough time. 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, I mean, in including your Q&A.
Yes. Oh yeah, I supposed to do my where can you find me and stuff. Oh right. So oh yes, what's my number 2 book? My number 2 book out of the 400 book is Flowers for Algernon. I don't know if you guys have read it, but it is, I read it this year actually. So it is the most amazing book that I have, amazing fictional book that I've ever read. So Sapien is like the most important and most interesting non-fiction book, and Flowers for Algernon is the most interesting fictional book. It talks about the digression of the human mind, and the how the human mind can be very smart also because of an injection or something. So it's kind of sci-fi, but it really really teaches you as a theme lah, that no matter how smart you get, or no matter how like you feel like how dumb you are, your personality and who you are is always what you make it to be, right? Um, when you're smart, it's never good to be sombong, but like don't be stuck up. So that's something very humbling lah. I learned a lot from it. You can just read it. It's such a joy because as the text, uh, the way the author writes it, right, in the beginning, there's so many grammatical errors, and it's done on purpose because this person is a simple man. So he doesn't go to school because he has a learning deficiency, and suddenly he gets involved in a science experiment that makes him smart. So you can see the progression of the way he writes, because it's a journal format. So it's from a very horrible, like a 2-year-old kid trying to write a journal, into like this sophisticated PhD guy because he got injected by the smart gene, and then suddenly he digressed, and then you can see him going back to how he wrote his journal before. So it's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So my handle is in chat. You can have a click and find me there. My books are also on the shop in my Instagram as well, or you can go to www.penwings.com to see that. Or you can just go to any bookshop and buy my book there. Yeah. So, yes. Yes. My
Great.
latest. Yeah. You want to say something, RC?
I think there's a question that you haven't answered yet, right?
Oh, really?
The
Oh,
one
I
prior.
missed it. Oh,
Yeah,
do
so
you
let me
think?
read it out. So do you
Okay.
think it's healthy to constantly be looking for self-improvement? I think it's a great question, by the way. I think what she might be implying is A, are you going to be too tired? And B, does it mean you don't like who you are right now all the time? So
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think everybody on this earth don't like who they are. There's always something that they don't like. It's either their nose or their eyes. Okay, no, it's not like that lah. I mean, like internally, like as a human being as well. It is healthy, and that is why humans and all animals are built that way, to survive on this planet, which is trying to kill us. So, uh, it's definitely healthy because it's better than just sitting idle, right? If not, you just be kind of like a vegetable and like, okay, I'm content with life and I'm satisfied with everything. But there's nothing wrong with that as well. So it really depends on you as a person, right? What is driving you to be happy in the end? But in the end, also happiness is subjective. So I can talk another 30 minutes about that. Yeah. So in the end, it is healthy because it gives you something to do, and it gives you a reason to zoom in on what you think is like important in life, rather than zooming out too much and suddenly looking at everything like everything is worthless and like not worth doing, and then Yeah, it's just a really sad way of looking at life. But unfortunately, a lot of people do look at it that way. But I know there are certain steps that you can take to, I don't know, not go into that space. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Cool.
it's a very interesting talk. I think, I think we truly feel how Teresa felt about the book. I think it also teaches us how to be constantly questioning things. It might be very tiring, but it is a sort of a necessary procedure for us to truly understand the purpose of our own lives and making our life our very own. So for the next speaker, we're going to have Aditya Thuli. Aditya is the Chief Digital Officer at Sime Darby Plantation Berhad. Prior to joining Sime Darby, he was the Vice President of Technology and Innovation at Malaysia Global Innovation and Creativity Center, it's a GLC. With 18 years of experience in technology, service design, and data analytics, Aditya has cultivated a culture of innovation for large organizations and launched innovative products and platforms for insurance, analytics, and talent ecosystems. Aditya will be sharing with us today the book Personality Isn't Permanent to help us understand, to help us break free from self-limiting beliefs and cultivate a creative mindset to transform our lives. So let's welcome Aditya.
All right, good evening, everyone. Okay, so I am going to share my screen first, and I hope that I'm audible, by the way. But let me share my screen, because I've also got some slides as I talk, and these slides are mainly for me, so please bear with me a little bit. Is everyone seeing a slideshow, first of all?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great, cool. All right, so we're going to switch a little bit, right? Because Teresa was talking about philosophy. I think the topic that I'm actually choosing is psychology. And the book that I'm going to talk about is a book called Personality Isn't Permanent. Now, off the bat, I have to say that I highly recommend everyone to actually purchase this book. By the way, I have no relation to Benjamin Hardy or getting any commission if you purchase a book. So let's be honest about it. But I do think this book will really, really help you. Whether you're an entrepreneur and you want to sort of 10x your game, or whether you actually want a personal transformation in your own life, I think this book helps. It has helped me over the last couple of months personally, and I'll speak about that as we go along. But this is really a good book. Now, I wouldn't say that this book is deep in research in the sense that if you want to learn about some specific elements of psychology, if you want to learn about mindfulness or flow and those kind of things, I think there are better books written just on those topics alone, right? But this book sort of brings it all together. So it has references to all that material plus many, many other stories. And it's those stories that really make this book unique, because those are true stories. These are stories of transformation in sort of various people's lives. So I really, really enjoyed this book and highly recommend it. Now, Benjamin Hardy, by the way, just as an introduction to him, he's a young chap. He's only in his 30s. So it's not like he's sort of built a 30-year or 40-year career in psychology. But I suppose where he got famous was on medium.com, right? He was writing on medium.com from 2014 to about 2018. And he was the topmost read author on medium.com. I think about 100 million people plus probably have read his blog on Medium. And potentially that's where this book actually has come about as well, right? So he was talking about psychology over there. He was doing his PhD while he was actually writing on Medium. And this book has come about from there. One of the other things that I did was he also actually has an online course called Future Self. It's a 30-day course. Each day is about 10 minutes video, right? So it's not that difficult to keep up with it. I actually did the entire 30 days. And again, it has benefited me a lot. So I really, really think that everyone should look into this as well. Whilst the book is great and you probably want it on your shelf and you'll probably read it once every year as a reminder, I think if you really want to get practical with this course, will actually help you to get practical with it. So in that sense, I think both of them are needed in that sense, right? Okay, so that's about the book. What's the basic idea about the books? The basic premise or the basic core idea, if you like, of the book is that our personalities can have and will definitely change. I think Teresa was talking about the fact that everyone in ourselves noticed some improvement or some changes over the past 10 years. I think everyone can look back 10 years and say, yeah, I mean, things were different then and we are different today. And so in that sense, the statement does make sense when you think about it sort of from a lens of the past. But I think subconsciously, all of us also have some limitations. We have fixated on some personality traits which we think are never going to change. As an example, half the population in the world believes that, they are not artistic or creative enough. Now, clearly that's coming from someplace, right? They have a fear. Perhaps they were, expressing ideas when they were young and then someone shot down those ideas, or they were actually trying to draw something out and, didn't really get the encouragement from their friends or their teachers or their parents or whatever. But I have seen this personally because I do some, sort of workshops where we ask people to doodle their ideas, and they're even sort of scared to actually put sort of pen to paper in that sense. So that's like a fixed mindset, right? We do have that somewhere in our subconscious that stops us. I can think about the same way about, say, whether one sees themselves as introverts or extroverts, right? Again, I personally used to believe for a long time that I'm an introvert, right? And I had to question where that sort of thinking was coming from. It probably was coming from the fact that I was reading too much of my horoscope, essentially. And so one of the traits of a Virgo is that you're introverted. But I realized that was actually stopping me. It was stopping me from going outside and going to social events. I started making excuses. I was like, oh, that's not me. I'm not going to enjoy that. I'm probably going to be standing in one corner and not going to be talking to anyone. And those are some things that stop us from doing and achieving what we truly want in our lives, right? What goals we really want to chase and how we really want to improve. These things do stop us. So whilst the statement seems simple enough, I do think that actually a lot of us do have fixed views or fixed traits that we think are never going to change, right? Now, I want to talk a little bit about how I came upon this book, because how this book really helped me over the last couple of months. So a little bit about me. I mean, my dad, passed away when I was still very young. He was diagnosed with cancer when he was about 44 years old. Just when he turned 50, he passed away. And I was 12 years old when he was diagnosed with cancer. So it was a sort of a key moment in my life. And today, just about right now, I'm about 43 years old, right? And so when we went into this pandemic and everyone was locked down and everyone didn't know where we were heading, and sort of people are scared about their health and, and so on, I think that hit me. Somewhere in my subconscious, I probably submitted to the fact that I might actually not live that long, that I might have inherited some of my dad's genes. And, this is it. My life isn't going to go anywhere from here, essentially. And that sort of negative thought really led to other negative thoughts and negative emotions. And I was sort of spiraling down into depression. This continued for about a month. So much so that my wife actually was really, really worried about me. She tried to reach out to a few friends saying, what's happening over here? Can you actually help? And my children actually stopped, started thinking that I wasn't fun anymore in that sense. So that is something that I was going through. And then I chanced upon this one article on I think it was BBC, and it was talking about Beyonce. I'm sure everyone here knows Beyonce, the artist. And what that article was saying is that, Beyonce, the way that she behaves on stage and the persona that she has on stage is actually very different to how she is in real life. In fact, she built the persona to be that bigger than life star when she got onto stage. And she actually named that persona. She had the name for it, which is called Sasha Fierce. She needed that, because in her real life, 24/7, she couldn't be that diva. She couldn't be that very supreme artist that everyone sees her when she gets on the stage. But she needed that as a persona so that she could perform and entertain everyone. And the article was basically saying that this is not really true only for Beyonce. In fact, it is actually true for many top performing sports people, other artists, even entrepreneurs. They all have an alter ego. They all have a different persona that allows them to operate at peak. And so that got me thinking about personality and got me thinking about, maybe, I should actually read a little bit about this topic. And so I chanced upon this book by Benjamin Hardy that just been released in June this year. And that's how I actually got onto this book. Now, at the same time, I was actually thinking through stages in life. And, I was noticing my daughter. My daughter is about 7 years old, just turning into 8. And I started noticing that she was actually developing a personality. She was actually sort of emulating her friends, or she was copying things she was seeing on TV and so on. She's dancing in front of the mirror and she's doing all those things. And I noticed that, or at least I thought about it, that there are various stages in life. You go from birth, probably to an age where, you know, when you're still a toddler and your brain is like a sponge, you know, you're curious and you're creative and you're touching and feeling everything in that sense. So that's like the peak of your curiosity, if you like. And then you go into the stage where my daughter is, and you actually sort of developing this personality. And then perhaps once you come out of university, you might actually have an identity. Yeah? Typically, most people's identity is their job, right? When I graduated from university and somebody said, "So what are you?" And I would say, "Well, I'm a computer engineer," right? And then you go to an age where you're more or less responsible. You might be responsible for maybe other people in your team. At work, you're responsible for aging parents. You might actually have your own family. At some point in time, everyone starts thinking about legacy, right? Everyone starts thinking about, am I leaving the world in a better place? And eventually everyone starts thinking about spirituality as well. Somewhere along the line, you'll start thinking about, am I actually feeding, you know, my soul? You know, have I done enough to actually thank God and so on? And then of course you have, you know, the death. And depending on what faith you are, sometimes, you know, you might believe in rebirth and so on. So, you know, that's how you actually typically think about stages of life. And why I highlight this is because in this chart, if you notice, identity comes after personality. So almost gives an indication that your identity is actually decided by your behavior and your personality. But where this book actually broke that for me was, it says the reverse. It actually says that your identity actually decides your personality. So your future identity decides your personality. Your personality is not based on things that happened in the past, but your personality can change based on what you want in the future, right? So how you view your future, what goals you have for your future, and therefore what actions you take to achieve those goals will ultimately decide your personality. And I thought that was something new for me, at least. You know, that's not how I was visioning the world to be. So anyway, that's at a high level. There are various chapters in the book. Benjamin takes us through myths of personality. He breaks down common myths that are related to personality, one of them being that personality is fixed. He also talks about the truth of personality, then, that personality is actually decided by actions, by goals. Goals shape your identity, and that identity finally shapes your personality. He also talks about trauma, because for a lot of people, our personality is fixated only because of things that have happened in the past, right? So he actually talks through how you can overcome trauma. He then also says, shift your story, because you are the author of your story. You are the narrator of your story, and you can actually change even your past. I thought that was very powerful. You can actually change your past. Then he actually thinks about, or he talks about subconscious, you know, some of the elements that you want to work through subconscious in your subconscious so that you're prepared for your future. And finally, he talks about redesigning your environment and how you should actually incorporate some of those triggers to ensure that you're actually headed towards your goals. So what I want to do next is briefly talk about these chapters, right? And I've used quotes over here, one quote each typically for each of those chapters. These are quotes from the book, not necessarily his own quotes, but these are quotes that he has in his book as well. So for example, when he talks about the myth or the myth surrounding personality, you know, this quote was really lovely. He says, human beings are works in progress that mistakenly think that they're finished. Yeah, for a lot of us who hit middle age, we think, well, that's how we are. You know, we are these sort of grumpy people who are never going to change. We are never going to be creative. We don't see ourselves as creative. Or we are never going to be extrovert because we are introverts and so on. And so he says, well, that's wrong, because we are basing our personality on what has happened in the past, not necessarily what we really want in our life. There are other myths he breaks through. For example, you know, this thing that somehow your personality will magically come to you, right? You just need to sit for inspiration. You just need to wait for purpose or passion or motivation. And he says, well, actually, those things are not effects. Those are effects. They're not causes, right? So you need to do some action, and then only you actually arrive at a purpose or a passion or a motivation. He also talks about the fact that, you know, this myth around we all have a personality, which is our true self. We all have just one single authentic self, and that's our personality. And that's not true either. I mean, you know, the Beyonce example is a good one. Each one of us actually has multiple personas, multiple personalities. We choose that personality based on where we are, right? So my personality at home when I'm with kids needs to be very different to how I am at work with my colleagues, or perhaps needs to be even different to how I would be in a social circle with other friends and so on. So the reality is that most of us actually have multiple personalities. We just need to work on the personality that will allow us to achieve our goals. So in the next chapter, that's what he talks about. He talks about the truth of personality. And he says that, you know, you can go as far as your mind lets you. You know, if you remember the movie Interstellar, there was a a quote over there by Tom Hardy. He says, dream a little bigger, right? Why are we actually afraid to dream bigger in that sense? Benjamin points out to this talk by Matthew McConaughey, who's a Hollywood actor as well. He had a great speech in Oscars in 2014 when he won the Oscar as Best Actor for Dallas Buyers Club. And Matthew actually says, well, there are 3 things he wants to share with everybody. So he takes that opportunity because he's in front of millions of people. And he says, there are 3 things I want to share with everybody. He says, in your life, you must always have something that you want to look up to. You always want to have something that you look forward to, and you must always have something that you chase. So if what do you look up to? You typically look up to your God, your faith. It could be, your parents, perhaps, if they've passed on, maybe they're blessing you from top or whatever. Those are things that he looks up to. He also talks about what he looks forward to, and he looks forward to his family, his wife and his kids, right? He wants to come back as a better person every evening when he comes back home. But he also talks about what he chases, and he says, what I'm chasing is essentially a future version of me. I'm chasing myself 10 years ahead of me, right? He says, he actually has a story on this. He says that somebody asked him when he was 15 years old, who's your hero? And he says, well, my hero is when I'm 25. Yeah, because I haven't reached there yet, but I know at 25 I will be. And then somebody comes back again and says, well, so now are you that hero at 25? And he says, no, actually my hero is 35. His goals have become bigger because he's achieved these things. And now he's dreaming even bigger. There's a similar story about Jim Carrey, for example. Jim Carrey used to be a stand-up comedian, used to carry, didn't have movies at that point. He used to carry a check that he had written to himself for $20 million. Every time he did a stand-up comedy show, he had that check in his pocket. And he had a goal around it. He said, in 5 years, I'll reach that. And actually, that's what happened. I think after Mask in 1995, he actually got a movie where he was paid $20 million. So it depends on what we want. Of course, not everyone needs to have money goals in that sense. But the point is that you can achieve what you want to. But what you should be doing in order to actually have the right goal, you need to expose yourself to other things, right? You need to expose yourself to learning through books, maybe through watching other people. You must have obviously some desire to do it. There must be a strong reason why you want that future self. So a clear vision is obviously needed. And then, of course, you need to take some small steps because you need to build your confidence. Right? Confidence builds what he calls identity capital. That identity capital allows you to build that identity and eventually change your behaviors and change your personality. So anyway, that's what he talks about in that chapter. And then in the 3rd chapter, he talks about trauma. And again, this is a quote from there. He says, we are kept from our goal not by obstacles, but by a clear path to a lesser goal. So we choose lesser goals because we are limiting ourselves. We believe that we can't do things because of maybe where we are, some things that have happened in our past. We've experienced some things that have burnt us. And so we choose lesser goals instead of chasing the bigger goal. And again, he has a story of a particular person over here. This guy is called Andre Norman. Andre Norman, born in Boston in a disadvantaged family, in a Black family, didn't really have that many resources with him. He got into a life of crime. By 18, he was already in jail. And when he got into jail, his vision was, because he was in the jail, his vision was, I want to be the top dog. I want to actually be number 1 in the jail. Everyone needs to fear me. So he actually, had a few attempted murders inside the jail. And then he was into confinement for many years. And over there, he actually said, well, it's not really enough to do attempted murders. I really need to murder all the other people who are on top of me. And so that was his goal. But then something happened to him. He came to this point where he said, well, to what end? If I do this, what happens next? I've achieved my goal, but there's no other way because I'll be stuck in prison forever, right? So he actually at that point shifted his thinking and he said, I need a different goal. And my goal is really now to get out of jail and have a successful life. And because he was in Boston and the most successful people in Boston tend to go to Harvard, he said, I want to go to Harvard, right? And so he made that happen because in 8 years, he was out of prison. He went to Harvard and today he's a fellow at Harvard. He speaks on the global circuit, a highly respected speaker. So clearly it is possible to overcome things that have happened in our past, your disadvantaged past or whatever things that might happen to your past. You can think about it differently. You don't need to be bitter about your past. You need to be thinking better about your future. So this is where he says that, your past doesn't define you, right? You need to actually have better goals that actually will define your future. Then he talks about narrative, right? He says that the stories that we tell ourselves will actually help us change our past, right? So we don't need to be actually bitter about our past. We need to actually rethink our past. We need to think about positive experiences and what we've learned from it. So again, a personal story over here, back in 2002, I actually went through a difficult health scare myself, right? And for a whole year, I had anxiety attacks and panic attacks because I thought that was the end of me even then, right? This was sort of close to when my dad had passed back, way back then. And you know, I can look upon that experience and always be scared about it, right? Because it created real panic in me for about a year or so. But that thing led to so many other positive elements in my life. Because of that, I actually started exercising more. Because of that, I decided I wanted to get out of India, and I went to the UK and became a UK citizen. And look where I am today. I'm in Malaysia. I've traveled so much because of all those things. So I can look at the positive aspects rather than the negative aspects and reshape my narrative. And the past changes every time we do that. You know, nobody remembers their past perfectly, by the way, but it depends upon what you remember about the past, right? So we must forgive the past. We must move on from it. You know, again, I can think about, you know, the movie Life of Pi, right? Or the book Life of Pi. You know, if you guys have read it or if you've seen the movie, right? Pi Patel has a choice. He can actually narrate the story as is, which would be the very cruel story. You know, his mother dies, his dad dies, his brother dies, and so on and so forth. Or he shapes a story of hope, and he shapes a story of positivity because he needs something to hold on to. He's made it to land. He still has his life in front of him. What story does he really want to actually believe in? What story does he want to tell the world? And he chooses the better story. He chooses a story about faith and positivity rather than of negativity. So that's a good example, I thought, as well. Of course, we must think about, sorry, I skipped one slide. The way that you go about this is you need to actually tap into your subconscious, right? So how do you tap into your subconscious? Well, there are various things that he discusses in his book. I can't really share everything, but you can form certain routines, right? You might have a daily routine, beginning of the day, end of the day kind of routine. Or you might actually start thinking about, you know, writing a gratitude journal or getting into meditation or any of those other things. He also talks about, you know, you must give away money, for example. Or you must even fast, right? When we fast, we cleanse our body, but not only are we cleansing our physical cells, but we're actually changing the cells that are connected to these receptors that we have in our brain. We are changing our thought patterns over time. So he talks about all these things that help us change our subconsciousness so that we can tap into that ocean of abundance. And then finally, he talks about the environment, because the environment does play a role as well, right? So me getting out of India as an example allowed me to overcome, you know, the issues that I had with anxiety and panic attacks. It could be as drastic as that for some people. It could be other things. You might want to get rid of negative people in your life. You want to surround yourself by more empathetic people. Or it could be other things. Because you want to act like your future self, you might want to invest in things that your future self will invest in, right? So you might actually take a few risks by investing in your education or anything like that, right? Because you want to act like your future self. You shouldn't act like your past self or your current self. So he talks about all of that as well. Okay. So in the end, I think, you know, there's a last chapter, by the way, in the book, which is very, very good. There's a very powerful story over there of deep trauma. I couldn't really think of anything more deep than that, but it is a positive story because that person was able to forgive their past and was able to overcome that and still transform their life. And where they are today, they are thankful for those things that have happened to them. That have happened for them, right? They don't see those things as happening to them. They actually see those things that have happened for them. And so he leaves this quote at the end. He says, personality isn't permanent. It's a choice. It's up to us how we choose it, how we act upon it. It depends on what goals we choose, right? It is important to have those things because you need to be chasing your future, not really be stuck in your past or even thinking about your present that much. So anyway, that's the book in a nutshell. Again, I recommend all you guys to have a look at this book. It's in Kinokuniya and in physical copy. If you want it, you can get it on Kindle. But also, you know, maybe have a look at his course. I think it will help you. It has helped me a lot. And I do think that I'm in a better place thanks to this book over the last couple of months. So anyway, thank you for that. Let me stop sharing my screen here because I haven't seen any questions as I was sharing this. All right,
so there are a few questions in the chat, and I think the best way to use this time would be for you to pick the questions that you would like to answer. Maybe you can answer one or two questions.
Okay, so let's see. Where does it start? I'm trying to scroll back. Okay, what's your persona is one question. Like I said, I think you have multiple personas. Each one actually has. How conscious are we in choosing the personas? I think that's the point, right? We are not very conscious about these decisions. We need to reach that level. Actually, I want to talk a little bit about consciousness because you know, you guys are aware of this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And so I thought Benjamin Hardy made a good point on this as well. He says, well, there is a hierarchy when it comes to your consciousness as well. And he says at the bottom, you can almost think about things that you are unconscious about your incompetence, right? You're incompetent in some things and you're unconscious about it. That's the lowest level. And then he says, well, a level better to that would be when you're conscious that you're incompetent, right? I'm conscious that I'm not really good at, as an example, writing, right? Maybe I need to get better at it, but that's a slightly better level than being simply unconscious about it. And he says, well, a higher level to that would be when you are conscious that you are competent, right? So I know that I have certain skills, that I'm good at certain things that I do, and therefore I keep on doing those things. And the highest level, he says, is when you are unconscious about how competent you are, because these things just happen in your subconscious. You just keep on doing things without realizing that actually you're good at it. So in that sense, I think when you think about your personas, you must think about, you know, there are certain personas where you're really, really good, but you're simply unconscious about it. And there's certain other personas that you consciously choose. Sasha Fierce is an example for Beyonce. Okay, anyway, I like to believe we are multi-layered and multifaceted with one stable core personality, but that may not be known to others and fluid other personality shells that will survive in achievements. Yeah, I think that's the same that I just said. It may feel, by the way, you might feel unnatural when you're trying to act like your future self. Remember, you're not there, and your future self is almost like an acquired state, right? Or an acquired taste. You still don't have it. But if you act like it, you will get there. So it might feel unnatural, but you need to be, I mean, as it says, you need to have certain fluidity around it. What's your process or daily ritual to change your narrative? I think you need to have goals and you need to remind your goal. And he talks about in his book about a keystone goal or a keystone challenge. So it's important to have one single goal that you're chasing, maybe for the next, I don't know, 90 days, maybe even 1 year, right? You cannot have 100 goals or 1,000 goals for that matter, because you need to be fixed. You need to know what you're achieving, why you're doing it, and you need to be fully committed to that, right? He reminds us that being 100% committed is actually easier than being 98% committed, right? When we are 98% committed, we are giving ourselves a choice. And by the way, when we give ourselves a choice, we create decision fatigue, because now we can decide what that 2% really means, right? So you need to be 100% committed and you need to choose one goal. And I think the best daily exercise would be to write that down and to remind yourself what your goal is, what you're trying to do. And give up on certain lesser things, right? Give up on social media. I've deleted my Facebook. You know, I'm only on Instagram right now, and that's a little private as well. I've given up on most of my social media. Don't try and read news because it's all negative. So, you know, those are some things that you might want to think about as well. Okay. And that's it. All right. I think I've answered most of those questions, right?
Yes, you do. All right. Excellent. So thanks so much for the talk. Let's give you a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being patient. I know it took a lot of time.
No, we are almost on schedule. It's excellent, you know, especially I think we all learned a lot from that, especially the idea that although we can't change the events in our past, what truly defines our past depends very much on our future, for which we do have control for, as long as we recognize it. I think that's a great thing to know. Okay, so our next speaker is Frankie Kok. Frankie is an award-winning business designer. He has collaborated with Stanford University's teams in developing an AR-powered escape room app that tackles the virtual education challenge during COVID-19. He has also coached creative problem-solving skills to global learners at Ideal University and worked with many Australian companies, including Domino's Pizza, City of Melbourne, News Corp, etc., in design thinking and lean startup methodology. And most importantly, he is our beloved Frankie. Frankie will be sharing what's your problem to help us address our toughest challenges through reframing and finding a better problem to solve. So let's welcome Frankie.
Thank you. Before I start, I also want to acknowledge how Adia and Teresa really framed the questions super well. Like how we are able to change our past with the psychology and philosophical and history learnings. And I'd like to go back a bit on the more practical sides today. Like how do we actually do it? Like what's the tools or framework we can think about it? And one of the books that I really love is From What's Your Problem from Thomas Wilder. It's a creative problem-solving coach around the world as well. Has been helping organizations like UN, Google, and so on to rethink and reframe the problem so that they can solve it much better and effectively. Has anyone shared the link? Saw the link that's shared across? There's a link down there. What's your problem? All right, if you see it, feel free to write down your problem so we could go through it together afterwards. So let's start with problems, right? All of us has problems. And what's your problem? Is it about purpose, dating, money, whatsoever? Just write down there so we can have a more interactive discussion in chat. This session is meant to be more interactive as well. So if you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to write down afterwards. All right, so let's start with a simple story and imagination. Imagine if you are owner of a building and you have to, everyone has to actually complain to you and say, hey, why is it so long? And I have to leave. I'm the tenant of the building and it's been such a long to go up. The lift is so slow and I just can't stand it anymore. How will you approach this problem? How will you solve it? Any thoughts? Feel free to share it out on the chat box. All right, deal with it. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? All right, while you're writing down, just share. Some people might say the lift is slow, so why don't you just upgrade the motor, improve your algorithm, and install a new lift instead? When there's more elevator, it's kind of make it faster, right? Put a fireman pole. That's cool. But that's actually a different way to think about it, because a lot of time when we are thinking about solving a problem, there's no right or wrong, but the fact that maybe there's a better way to do it, or there's a cheaper, faster, and better. What if there's a trap within the question itself where the lift is slow as a framing? Maybe it's about the waiting time. People is annoyed about waiting time. There's one building manager, what they do is put a mirror on there. So when everyone sees the lift, they can see themselves and they can just look at how handsome and beautiful they are. It's like, wow, that's where the time goes. Or they can just play a music or watch Netflix. So having the different feeling and make that wait time feels very, very much enjoyable. That feelings changes and no one complains afterwards. So that could be a simple way to solve it in just one day instead of spending million ringgit on doing that. And look for another stories. So about dog adoption problem. I think in Malaysia, in particular, there's a lot of dogs in the street as well. And how do we usually approach that? Any thoughts? We should write in the chat. So some ways that we have tried to solve it is through when there's limited like to get people to actually feel the pain for the dog shelter, because every year there's millions of dogs in the shelters, and typical way is just to use a poster that shows the neglected, sad-looking dogs, and make people feel compassionate about it, and donate to support the cause or adopt a dog. So the framing of problem is about people not enough people feel the pain, so they create a better advertisement and creating and more advertisement to get people to do it. But that has been an issue where because there's limited compassion around the world. So despite the efforts in shelters and programs, a lot of the dogs still not get adopted. So how do we reframe the problems? Any thoughts there? Feel free to write on chats. One way of organization thinking is about rethinking a problem. So the problem is, what if we can find the problem is actually lack of awareness, where people actually want to adopt dogs, but it's just hard to find. So they create a dog dating apps where make it dogs really accessible and adorable. They can easily find that. So it's like your fluffy singles around you, where you can just matchmake it and find a great match when you meet them. Or maybe the problem is not about adoption is actually, why is there adoption in the first place? The family members who actually have the first adoption, maybe why don't they just keep the dogs there? So one organization actually go there and research them and find out that the family actually love to have the pets, but the problem is they just can't able to afford it because the vet costs like 1,000 ringgit and they just don't have the money to do so. So what about just solving that problem and just rethinking how do you keep the pets going there? There's organization to do that actually gets 5,000 much more effective adoption afterwards. So just rethinking about whether we solve the right problem from the start before we just jump into solutions might end up helping us to solve the problem much better and faster. Like Albert Einstein also mentioned about, before you solve the problem, just think about how do you use old problems in different angles. Any creative imagination and make it work by having the skills of experimenting. And there's the books actually share a lot of different ways to approach it. Like look outside the frame, what are we missing? Rethinking a goal, so is there a better goal to pursue? Examining the blind spots, looking in the mirror and take that perspective. So for example, getting and ask about a family, why do you not have the dog cat in your first family? It's about taking the perspective, just really learning about the problem you're trying to solve. And that kind of gives you a different perspective of it. Because a lot of problems are there for really long and it's hard to solve it. And go through one of the goals that you think about, rethinking the goal. So one way that I really like to use is really thinking about what would success look like if you are thinking about a goal. For example, the goal you're trying to achieve is getting a promotion. What does it lead you to? Getting money. So what does it help you to achieve? Is there other ways to achieve the goal? One example is that for the person to kind of learn about this, he actually contacted a headhunter and get a headhunter to find a boss. So after the headhunter find a boss to other company, which he doesn't know about it, and he got promoted afterwards, just by rethinking about how to go and how to approach it. So that's my thoughts, and let's go through what's your problem. Anyone share the problems there? Okay, we have a few problems here. Navigating a political and toxic work environment. Struggle from insecurity, self-doubt, fear of not being enough. If you have any problems, write down so we can go through it together. Does anyone like to share their problem? And we could experiment together. Just thinking about the checklist and go through it, or
I really like that problem, imposter syndrome. I have to say that, even though I've had a decent career and I've achieved quite a lot, that is a problem that remains with many of us. I've seen many people, including myself, go through that on many occasions. Even very, very successful people go through that. So I would love to see how we can approach that problem.
I wrote that actually.
okay. Why don't I go through it together? Imposter syndrome and just thinking about it. So
if we can find a solution for that, oh God, I tell you. But
Wow.
it is a real problem. That's all I wanted to say. So if you wrote that, yeah, that's courageous. And actually, I would love to say you'll get over Teresa when you get slightly older, but I don't think so.
Oh no.
It's a hard problem. Yeah,
It's a hard problem.
it's a hard problem. Okay, why don't we just see if we can solve it together? So what does imposter syndrome means? Like how will you feel that when
Basically, when people ask me to talk, and I might think that I know what I'm doing, but actually I don't, but I kind of just talk my way through it and try to do the best I can. I always feel like I'm underqualified because for some reason, everyone that speaks with me, they have like masters and PhD and, you know, worked in the industry for like 20, 30, 40 years. And then they suddenly invite this designer who's like in the working force for like only 4 or 5 years. Yeah. So I think it comes from like comparing myself to like the achievements of others and like what they have already, what name they've already made for themselves, and like in what way and why am I in the same panel as these people? Like it doesn't make sense. So although they think it makes sense, but to me it doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I feel like I have to do extra to kind of prove myself that this person that believes in me, that I can believe in myself also. So I try to research and be a bit more. I just get informed more on my next task that I have to do, which I feel like I'm not competent enough to do. So I will just do the extra work to make sure I don't look like a fool. Yeah, pretty much.
I think first of all, I just want to acknowledge you for being really courageous to share the stories. It's really powerful, and I'm sure a lot of people can feel that. And thanks for opening up the stage to share it. It's something that we can all feel in common as well. And I'm just curious, is there a positive thing about this? Like, is there a time that maybe having this feeling can help you in some ways?
Oh yeah, so because this type of pressure is put on me, I'm forced to perform. Like it's either I perform or I just make a fool out of myself, and I rather perform than make a fool out of myself. So I just try my best to do it. It's a good kind of pressure. For example, writing a book, right? I don't have a writer's English degree. I didn't go to like some nice English university to study language and the beauty of history of English. But so I just wrote it, right? I just practice and I read intensely so much because I've had super low confidence in my output, in my writing. But in the end, it turned out well, right? Like 30,000 people read my stuff. So it proves as like a kind of a validation that this kind of feeling, it will help you. It will give you a lot of anxiety. It does. But it is kind of like a driving force to make you do stuff.
And so
to actually try things.
So one way you
because
can...
in the end, nowadays it's super easy to learn things, right? Everything's on the internet. So self-learning is the best sort of learning, actually. So,
wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing the bright spot about how you're actually using it as a driving force to do it. Maybe a way we could actually reframe the problem is how might we having the positive pressure to perform at the same time feeling good enough, feeling like...
Yeah, it can't be crippling lah. Like maybe you can cry or what, like in private, but like but when you have to do the task, you have to do the task lah. But if you want to be negative and like crippling, oh my god, I can't do this, like I just rather just do it in front of my cat or something, and get it done with, and then suck it up and just do it, kind of thing. Yeah, I think my life mantra is just suck it up.
and having a cat to help you as well, right? But basically, so
You got cut off.
oh, sorry. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of off the video so that it's easier to hear.
Yeah.
I think that three things I've learned from that. One of it is you use the drive to kind of perform, but also managing it in different ways, such as maybe having a cat or having your own personal philosophy of values. And so maybe a way to think about it is how do we build our personal values, or how do we build our philosophy or principle, and when facing that, kind of remind ourselves, kind of iterate.
Yes, that is so important. Like knowing your values. I actually learned that from therapy, which I tried for like 2 months because I just really want to know what happens in therapy, and I hate the stigma that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that the therapist said that you have to analyze what your values in life are, and then only then you can know if your partner that you want to find or your job that you want to find has the same values as you or have values that complement your values. Because if you have contradicting values, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah, that's true.
Something like that. She has a list of values that you can pick up.
Thanks so much for sharing, Teresa. I hope that kind of gave us a bit of clarity and objectify like how do we see the feelings differently, and also learning a lot of inspiration and how people actually use it positively and also managing it in so many different ways, like therapy, the cat, driving force, because we all have the imposter syndromes, right? But as a community, when we just learn from others, having that positive feelings and getting that a therapy cat, Josh is a Josh. Having that mindset, it could help us get better on it. So anyway, I hope you enjoy the sharing and got something out of it. Any questions so far?
Sorry, as Charissa was talking about that, right? I was thinking of another book. I haven't read this book, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a lady called Julie. I think it's called The Making of a Manager. So Julie Zhu, I think, is was at Facebook, and I think she was very young when she became the VP of, I don't know, something, VP of design or whatever at Facebook, when she was still very young. And then she had to manage a team where there were more people, designers more experienced than her and so on. And I don't know whether that's relevant to this topic, but somehow it triggered. I've not read that book myself. I wanted to read it, but it might help a little bit thinking about, how each one of us feels less sometimes, right? We feel like we are not really competent or don't deserve what we have. And I think what Charissa was also sharing is very powerful, that, you just have to learn. You've got to take it as a learning opportunity, and there's so much that we can learn these days. So I don't know, I just wanted to share, maybe that book has something interesting in it, and perhaps could be something that we pick up next and read that book.
I feel like we can do a book class of these already. There's so much new good books that we could read. But anyway, thanks everyone for having me, and pass back to RC.
All right, thanks so much. So let me quickly wrap up the speakers session by sharing my thoughts. I think this is the only time a moderator in an event gets to say things that are not by the script. Sorry, I'm back. This is like I'm in Shanghai, connected to the US, connected to the Japan via various VPNs. So
teleporting to us.
So, so yeah, today's sessions are actually organized in a very interesting order. I thought it's very useful. I think Charissa started the sessions by telling us the importance of questioning things. The questioning things is the fundamental practice of creativity. You need creativity to do so. And questioning things is essentially the only way for us to truly feel confident about the answers that we find, the teachings that are imposed on us, and the norms that we observe. And then Aditya kickstart a session of sharing an important application of the spirit of sharing thing on how we perceive and accept our past. I think it tends to be very intuitive to think that the past is just the past, but in reality, the past is just a collection of events, and what truly defines the past is our courage to question and to redefine it. Frankie ended these sessions very nicely with some practical advice and hands-on exercises that become the first steps of unleashing our creativity. And I think very importantly, he also demonstrated that creativity and courage itself is enhanced when we do it in a group with interactions and sharing, which is, I think, the purpose of this community. So thanks so much for the speakers for sharing. And I will pass the mic back to Frankie to wrap up the session today.
Wow, thanks, RC, so much. Let's give me a big round of applause for really getting this prepared and sharing and facilitating and moderating so really well. Really awesome and love that. So anyway, learning can't be done without reflection. So right now we just come up with some simple thoughts, right? How do you feel about the whole event, right? What do you actually learn? What's the most impactful learning lessons for you? Just think about it. A lot of times when we want to learn something and kind of absorb, taking a bit of time to write down, kind of get us to sink in and become more mindful than learning. And think about how does it impact you for you? Like how will you use it to apply in your daily life? Books, the consumption and learning and just listening won't be any helpful. It has not changed in your daily life if you do not apply it and make use of it. So taking your time, taking 1 or 2 minutes, just really think down about what we have heard, what we have seen, and let's just share it and just write down like how is it like for you, right? Okay. I'll play some music. All right, 1 more minute. All right. While you're still writing, I kind of just say it out quickly about what are some of the things that I've seen and learned from it. So measuring the gain is more important than forced selective attention. Focus on a goal that matters and commit to it 100%. vulnerability, anti-fragility, post-traumatic growth. Choosing your problems, choosing the right field to focus on. And how we apply it, so we can be more forgiving to ourselves. I love that. That makes a +1 here, right? It's sometimes we get too hard on ourselves, and having that space and moment to be forgiving is very helpful. The trust and sharing without reservation. Awesome. Creating your own meaning daily. Anyone like to share about what they shared over here? Just about anything that's kind of stood out to you, or things that you have learned that want to bring out forward. All right, I will speak Shangrong because you asked quite a lot of questions. You want to share? And I know it's a cat right now, but
Hold on. Actually, the most interesting I learned from this sharing is how our future will shape our personality. Because from my understanding previously, I thought that we build our personality from our past itself instead of the future. So I think it's quite interesting, and it is also interesting that you can enhance or you can reshape your personality by creating more goals and life and plans to achieve them. I find this quite inspiring for a session because yeah, I never thought that planning goal is so important in shaping my future and shaping my personality as well. So thanks for the session.
no worries. Thanks, Shangrong, for sharing. And would Eunice like to speak a bit about as well? I would like to just give round of applause to her as well for really going back on the stage to getting the chat interaction going, summarizing really good thoughts about how we have been learning from our quotes, and like giving that moment to sink in and having it digitally. I think that's a really good job. So thanks for doing that job and being here as part of us. Any thoughts from you, Eunice?
I feel like I've spoken enough, so I really want to pass the spotlight to other, like participants, because I really want to hear their beautiful voices. So maybe let's pick someone else to share their thoughts. Yeah, would that be awesome?
Wow, it's awesome to hear the thoughts, by the way. Yeah, your voice.
I'll go.
Sure.
Go. Okay, so impactful learning points. I wrote down measuring the gain is more important. It is for selective attention. I really like that quote. Really resonated with me. And why it was impactful is because it's you can see over here, the grateful for your success. It allows you to be grateful for your successes, so that you can focus your efforts on that. And why that's powerful when you focus your efforts on your successes is that it allows you to study it and extract useful points from it and replicate it in other areas of your life, and just duplicate your successes and just make that as a force multiplier. So yeah, do that constantly.
Wow, such a powerful words. Thanks for that.
I am Dracula, so that's why I'm pretty powerful.
Let me give a big love and fruit of Dracula. Thanks for dropping by and eating.
I need to go back to Transylvania, so I got to catch my flight.
Right. You and your Dracula wife over there.
I got a bit scared to see that. All right. So thanks everyone for sharing. Before I close up, just want to give a quick shout out to all our speakers here. If you'd like to connect with them, one of the ways to actually just share what your learning is and any inspiration and how does it cultivate your purpose in daily life. Having that sharing, and you can tag them if you like to sing into it. So this is all the link we shared across, and also we also have a community groups. We do have a community group. If you'd like to join and kind of keep in touch, here's the community can join to have future updates. Because before it ends our session, why don't we have a group pictures, right? So sing into what we learned today, and also having a chance to actually see your face, that's if possible. We like to kind of have a group picture about books, maybe a future of books that I kind of imagine, kind of have a theme about it, and just do something about books, maybe reading it or maybe seeing it, whatever vision that you have in mind, kind of just imagine a theme and love to see your face if it's possible to have a group picture. Right. Nice seeing everyone. Hi Shangrong, hi Grace. First time. Oh, there's a books. Oh, you can actually carry books as well. That's actually a very smart way. Hi John.
I think asking people to prove that they actually read is very interesting. Like, pull up a book. I bet you can find one.
Wow. There's a background with the universe. Maybe it's all the books universe. Okay. Maybe it's about finding a books in books that you have. I have a book. So it's about value proposition. All right. So we have all the really cool, amazing books. Anyone like to open up their video, say hi? Awesome books. Wow, everyone has books. Okay.
I need to turn off this to show my book.
We are not proving anyone, but thanks for doing that. Wow, so many books. Okay, so let's have a smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. Yeah, thanks for being the as well. So, thanks everyone. The whole session just ended, and I hope you all gained something out of it today. All right, that's all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Really enjoyed
you.
being here. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice
Thank
evening.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi.
Hey, how did it go?
It went well. I think you were, I think I heard 90%, 99, maybe 98.5% of everything you were saying.
I think Charissa, thanks for jumping in and having that conversation. Oh wait, Charissa's gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Teresa gone? So that was just a static image of her.